Let me tell you a story that starts with a song and ends with silence, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Back in 2003, Sean Paul was everywhere. Billboard charts dominated. Clubs bumping his voice on every speaker. And then came Baby Boy, a collaboration with Beyonce that wasn't just another track. It was a moment. Sexy, infectious, radio perfect. It had the energy of two stars leveling up together. But beneath all that heat and hype, something cold was brewing behind the scenes. Something that, to this day, has people wondering if Sean Paul got sabotaged by none other than Jay-Z himself. See, the rumors didn't start as whispers, they exploded. People started speculating that Sean and Beyonce had something going on off-camera. The music video didn't help either. It was steamy, full of chemistry, and had people talking, and while most fans were just excited about the collab, there was one man who reportedly wasn't happy, Jay-Z. Not because the song was too hot, but because maybe, just maybe, it got a little too close for comfort. According to Sean Paul, things got real uncomfortable real fast. He wasn't just dealing with tabloid chatter, he was getting shut out of his own song. Despite Baby Boy becoming a chart-smashing hit and one of Beyonce's biggest singles at the time, the two barely performed it together. Not because they didn't want to, but because every time they tried, something mysteriously went wrong. First, there was the mic incident. Sean comes out on stage, the crowd goes wild, everything seems cool until he realizes his mic is dead. His own band was furious because they knew it wasn't a glitch. Somebody had literally turned his mic off mid-performance. That's not a mistake, that's a message. Then there was the fire stage incident. No, really, literal fire. At an MTV performance in Scotland, they'd rehearsed everything, walked to the center of the stage, surrounded by flames, hit their marks, lighted up. But when it was time for Sean to sing, the music skipped right past his verse like he didn't exist. Beyonce pulled him aside afterward, clearly upset, and asked him about the rumors. She wasn't playing. She told him this kind of gossip could hurt her career, and she needed to know what was really going on. Sean, baffled, said he had nothing to do with the rumors. But that conversation, it changed things. From that point on, their working relationship was never the same. The most brutal blow came at the VMAs. Sean was told they'd be contacting him for rehearsal details. They never did. Instead, he sat in the audience and watched Beyonce perform his song solo while his voice boomed through the speakers. No warning, no explanation, just total exclusion. He was humiliated. And the worst part, he couldn't even speak up. The moment he did, the narrative would shift to him being bitter or messy, and that's a label no artist wants. So he swallowed it. But years later, when he finally did speak, it became clear that experience cut deep. And while Jay-Z never publicly acknowledged any involvement, Sean had his suspicions, especially when Jay released a track with the line, "Run up on me at the light, you will lose your life, need a light." Sean couldn't help but think that was a shot at him. After all, his breakout hit was "Gimme the Light." Coincidence? Maybe. But when you stack that on top of everything else, the cancellations, the silencing, the distance, it starts to look like more than bad luck. It starts to feel like a warning. Sean Paul didn't grow up in the industry with a silver spoon. He earned every hit through grind, charisma, and a unique blend of dancehall and pop that gave him global appeal. So when Baby Boy turned into a massive phenomenon, it should have been a career milestone he could celebrate, but instead it marked the beginning of a strange unspoken blacklist. The mic off, the skipped verse, the VMA's exclusion, none of it added up. And even though nobody said it outright, Sean could feel it. Doors started closing. Invitations that were once greenlit suddenly fell through. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. People started saying Jay-Z had a pattern when it came to men getting too close to Beyonce. According to Bun B, Jay once cleared an entire set during the Check On It music video shoot, not because there was a security threat, but because he didn't want other men watching Beyonce dance. Jay wasn't even there in person. He just heard about the male presence on set and made a call. And just like that, the room emptied. Beyonce later had to apologize to everyone and explain that Jay was just uncomfortable. That wasn't a one-off, that was control. And it makes you wonder, was Sean Paul just one of many? Some say Usher was reduced to a dancer in the Naughty Girl video instead of being listed as a co-artist because Jay didn't want his name too close to Beyonce's. Others claim that male features started disappearing from Beyoncé's projects altogether. She became more and more of a solo force, undeniably talented, of course, but surrounded by fewer and fewer male artists. Think about it. For an artist of her size, her list of male collaborations is shockingly short. Maybe that's by design. For Sean, though, the effects weren't just artistic, they were personal. After the fallout, he said he felt like he couldn't even speak Beyoncé's name in interviews without catching side eyes or pushback from certain circles. And while he never publicly accused Jay-Z of anything, his tone made it clear he believed someone powerful, was pulling strings behind the curtain. The fact that a track as big as Baby Boy only got 3 joint performances, that alone says everything. And then there's the Daily Beat interview, the one where Sean finally opened up after years of staying quiet. He wasn't bitter, he wasn't messy, he was just honest. He talked about how he barely spent time with Beyoncé during the recording process, how they didn't really hang out, how it was all professional, but still the rumors came fast. People assumed chemistry meant connection, and in the music world, perception is everything. Sean said he had no idea how the gossip started, but once it did, it spiraled out of his control. He also made it clear that the situation made him feel helpless. When your mic is cut on stage, you don't get to recover. When your verse is skipped on live TV, you can't fix it afterward. When you're told you'll be contacted for rehearsals and then iced out, what can you even do? Complain? Not without being labeled difficult, not without risking your reputation. The message became clear: step out of line, even unintentionally, and you'll be erased. Not in an obvious way, not with statements or tweets, but slowly, subtly, quietly. The kind of erasure you can't prove, but you feel. And maybe that's the scariest kind, because when someone like Sean Paul starts questioning whether he's being targeted, you realize just how deep the control might run. Jay-Z has always played chess, not checkers. Whether in business, music, or relationships, he's known for thinking 5 moves ahead. So when people started putting the pieces together, Beyoncé's reduced male collaborations, Sean Paul's vanishing act, Usher being pushed to the background, it wasn't hard to imagine that Jay was behind the curtain, orchestrating it all. Not with malice necessarily, but with a ruthless instinct to protect what he saw as his empire, his image, his woman. And maybe it wasn't just about jealousy, it could have been about power. Beyoncé was ascending fast, and anything that might shift public focus or blur her brand with someone else's, especially a man's, became a threat. In Jay's world, threats don't get warnings, they get erased. Quietly, strategically. And if the rumors about him sneaking around with other women in the industry were true, maybe this was more about projection than protection. Maybe he knew what men were capable of because he was that man. He saw his own shadow in Sean Paul, and that's what made him flinch. Sean, for his part, never went full scorched earth. He never dropped names or exposed receipts. He's an artist who's always moved with humility, letting the music speak for itself. But you could tell from the way he talked about it, especially years later, that it still stung. This wasn't just a bad business move. This was personal. A song that should have been a milestone ended up becoming a black mark, one that followed him for years, shaping the way others saw him, without ever understanding what happened behind the scenes. But time has a funny way of exposing what silence tries to bury. Fans started revisiting old interviews, performances, and stories from people who'd been around the power couple. Patterns started to emerge. Jay-Z wasn't just controlling, he was strategic. There were whispers of him blocking access, screening collaborations, even calling shots on who Beyoncé could stand next to in a frame. Was it insecurity, ego, a bit of both? Whatever the root, the fallout was clear. A handful of talented men found themselves on the outside looking in, wondering what they did wrong. Even now, in an era where everything is scrutinized and dissected online, the Baby Boy situation remains one of the most glaring mysteries in Beyoncé's career. Why did one of her biggest early hits never get the full treatment it deserved? Why did Sean Paul, an artist with massive credibility and reach, get left in the shadows? And why, all these years later, does it still feel like no one wants to talk about it out loud? Maybe because there's still fear. Jay-Z isn't just a rapper, he's a mogul. He's tied into platforms, partnerships, and legacies that are bigger than music. Speaking against him, even indirectly, comes with consequences. And Sean knew that. That's why he kept his tone measured. That's why he waited years to even speak up. But when he did, he didn't ask for sympathy. He just told the truth as he lived it. In the end, Baby Boy will always be a hit, but behind that glossy video and those iconic vocals lies a story of power, pride, and paranoia. One where a rising star got caught in the crossfire of a much bigger game. And even though the music still plays, the silence between those two artists says more than any lyric ever could. Because sometimes what isn't said is louder than what is.